Welcome to Crazy, Creepy, and True Stories. I'm Kate, and today's story is called A Demon Summons. This story still scares me, and this happened, it's been years and years and years ago. I was young. I was still actually somewhere around 16 or 17 years old, maybe a little bit older. I might have been about 18. So in this story, I'll say 16 to 18 years old, because this happened over a time period, but this one particular incident was the last time that I was in this house. My grandmother was a private duty nurse, and she and I were very close. I would often, when I was young, when I was real young, she would work overnight, and she would watch me during the day while my mother worked during the day. And being the youngest in the family by a lot of years, I was sort of that surprise baby that, they had to make arrangements for. We did have a housekeeper, we did have a cook, we did have a handyman, but you can't ask these people to not do their job and watch me. Being a private duty nurse, she worked for wealthy people. And when these people died, they often left her or gave her sums of money. They left her real estate, vehicles, things like that. So what she did was she turned all these things into real estate, and she started what we call nowadays flipping houses. So she got a real estate license, she started flipping houses, and that's where she started making and saving her money. So by the time I got up until around 16 to 18, she was fairly, well-to-do, and she had quite a few properties. I would go and stay at some of the properties, from time to time. Well, there's one place, I guess I have to tell you, too, that she had 3 other sisters. All of them at this point, including my grandmother, had passed away. It's an amazing fact that I even became a Christian, because they were very heavy into witchcraft. When they died individually at different times, and the family went to, clean out their houses or wherever they were at the time, we would clean out these places, and we would find, charms and pieces of red cloth tucked in places, and bags of mysterious substances stuck under the rugs, and, just all kinds of bizarre things. So that's another whole story in itself. I could tell you things that would turn your hair gray. But anyway, so my grandmother had all these properties and stuff, and one of my aunts had acquired what was a mansion. That's the only thing I could say it was. It was a Civil War era mansion, and this was in Cleveland. I went on Google to try to find a picture of the house, because it was a huge, sprawling thing on a large acreage of land. This was at least about 50 years ago that this story took place. I went to look, couldn't find it, and the area looks totally different now. It's an entirely different looking area than what I grew up and what was in my memories. I even found large vacant lot, because they ended up tearing that particular house down. And for a long time, my aunt, I can remember her saying that the city wanted to buy the house to tear it down, to put a freeway or a street or something through there. I don't remember exactly what, but I remember it had something to do with cars. And she did not want to sell it, because it just didn't make sense what they were saying, where the house was located, because it was located in the middle of a large, long residential street. This was the kind of house, and I have to explain to you what this house looks like on the inside, so that you can get the full understanding of what happened in this house. On a good, bright, sunshiny day, it was the scariest house you ever wanted to see. It was, like I said, it was one of those large mansion, Civil War style mansion houses that had the long hallways with the little suites off of the hallways. It was 3 stories. First story, you would come into the house, then you went up about 4 long wooden steps, and you were in a large area that had all these rooms that were facing in different directions. Off to your right was the living room. Large room, All these rooms had like windows across the front. There was a very dark, heavy wooden smell in these rooms. It was almost oppressive. I can't even ever think of a time that this house was actually light and airy. It was just always dark and oppressive in there. And I don't know whether it was because the wood was dark or I don't know. It was just kind of a creepy house just to begin with. So anyway, the living room was right off to your right. If you turned your head and looked just a little bit like you were going to look straight ahead, off to the left of the living room was a conservatory. You would go in there and it was a stone floor. It had the windows all the way around. You could see out into a massive stretch of land and backyard. It had trees all over everywhere. It was a lot of green. This was in Northeast Ohio, so there's a lot of trees and green up there anyway. But it was always kind of dirty. They didn't keep it as a place for plants. It had a door that led out into the backyard, which I can't ever remember seeing anybody going in and out that door. So I don't know if the door was a usable door, but I know it went out to the backyard. That wasn't the door that we took when we had to go out in the yard. But just a large conservatory. Off to the left of that, and now you're standing facing, straight back, was a smaller room. It was like a mud room, if you know what that is, where you come in from outside and you have to put any kind of boots and clothes, especially because it's, again, Northeast Ohio, so in the wintertime, if you were coming in from outside, you would have to put your boots and your coat and all that stuff in this room so you wouldn't track things all through this house. So it was a mud room, and the door that went out into the backyard, and that's the door that we used. It was, I guess, about the size of a walk-in closet. There was enough space to hang up, for a bunch of people to come in and hang up their stuff, but it wasn't like you could come in and sit down and, whatever. If you look off to the left a little bit from there, there was a massive dining room. Also, I'm assuming at one point that this dining room must have been like a ballroom, because it wasn't, you didn't have a lot of cabinets or, like china cabinets and stuff like that. There was this ginormous table in there. And it wasn't ginormous because I was a lot younger and smaller. It was a ginormous table. And it sat in the middle of this dining room, had chairs all the way around it. And that was pretty much all that was in this room. If you look to the left of the dining room, there was a hallway, a small hallway, where if you went through this hallway, you would be going back towards the kitchen. To the left of that hallway was a massive wooden staircase, and it went up to the second floor. It actually went up to a landing where a big grandfather's clock was, turned, and then went up to the second floor. That's the first floor. Okay, back to this hallway off to your left. It's right past the major stairway. If you go through that doorway, there's a second set of stairs, which was the servants' stairs. There was one set that went up to the second floor, and then there was one set that went down into the basement. Then you walk past those two stairs, and you were in a room that, the best I can describe, I'm assuming was some sort of room that was like an educational teacher's room back in Civil War times, because on one wall, the entire wall was covered with a map of the world. But I remember them always telling me, because I would always look at this map, and I would remember them always telling me, don't pay any attention to that because that's not right. That's not correct. And I'm thinking, well, why would you have a map on your wall that's not right? But as an adult, I realized that the map probably came with the house, because the house was a Civil War era house. Cleveland has a lot of that style neighborhood. They had a lot of neighborhoods like that. There were a lot of millionaires at the time, which would be equivalent to our billionaires now, that lived in Cleveland, and they actually had a section of town called Millionaires Row. So anyway, this room, like I said, that I'm assuming must have been like a room where kids were educated, and it was about the size of a 9 by 12 bedroom. It was a size, a fairly decent sized room. And then going through that room, you go into the kitchen, massively large kitchen. And then there was another door that went outside to the side of the house. But you would go into this kitchen. The kitchen was huge. And if you went to the far back of the kitchen, off to the left, there was a pantry. And the pantry was very large and it wrapped around. So if you went into the pantry from the kitchen, if you went all the way through it in sort of like a half circle, you would come out in the dining room. It had passageways. I don't know what these people were doing. I'm not a real big history buff, and I don't know why these people had to have all these passageways. I understand, Underground Railroad, that kind of thing, helping soldiers and slaves and people escape. But the architects at that time were very fond of putting passageways in these huge houses. Maybe it was just for the convenience of the household or the staff or whatever, but these passageways were cold, they were damp, there were forever a lot of dead cats and rats and spider webs and bugs, and I stayed out of the passageways, but they had, again, passageways that went from, if you went, like I said, in the kitchen through the pantry, you could get to the dining room. If you went on the side of the wall in the conservatory that was up against the house was a passageway. If you went from that one, you came out in the room where the school, where I thought that school kids were. So, there were things like that. On the wall in the basement, I've only gone down there, or only went down there a couple of times, and that was with my cousin. I never, ever went down there alone. There was a plaque on the wall, or not a plaque, but a picture frame, and it had a letter from one of the Civil War generals. And I'm not sure, I can't remember which one, but it was an actual letter, and I was very impressed with it. And it was hanging on the wall down there. And there was, again, a series of passageways that went under the house. One time that I remember going down there with my cousin that I remember fully. So one time she went down there, and I don't think I ever actually went all the way down there. And then the second time, or the last time, or final time that I went down there was with her. I went actually all the way down the steps. I saw the picture frame with the, letter in it and everything. And she was getting ready to go into one of these tunnels to come out somewhere else. And let me tell you something about me. If you read one of my books, I think it's In Reality, the book In Reality, I make it known that I am not that person. If there's a green glowing light and the door is shaking and smoke is coming out from under it, I'm not that person that's going to look at that door and say, I should go open that and see what's in there. I don't care what's in that door. I'm figuring whatever's behind that door is probably something I don't want to see. Okay, so my curiosity is not such where I'm going to go and open that door to look and see what's in it. I don't care what's in it. All I know is that door is acting weird, so I need to be as far away from that door as I could possibly get. So when she was going through this tunnel, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going back upstairs and I'll see you later. You could be in this place and be in there for a really long time and never run into anybody else. Upstairs, if you go up the large main stairway, off to the right is a large set of, it's a suite. It's a large set of rooms for, I'm assuming, whoever the master of the house was. My aunt had those rooms. And it had, it had the bedroom, the drawing room, the sitting room, the bathroom, the full bathroom, that kind of thing. There was another room that connected, wasn't just a doorway, it was a whole big room. It connected with a second smaller suite that was off if you started going to the left down the hallway. The massive room suite was at the top of the stairs off to the right, and it was the only thing that was over on that side. The rest of the house stretched out down to the left. So you're going down this long corridor, and there are bedrooms and, smaller suites, smaller bedrooms, and they progressively got smaller as you went down. So the rooms that connected were the first massive one, and the second smaller set of suites, which is what my cousin had. Connecting to that room was another suite, but it was just a room and a bathroom. There was no sitting room to it. The only thing I can tell you was there was an really ancient lady that used to be in that room, and there was a hospital bed in that room, and she apparently was confined to this hospital bed, and that my cousin would have to go into the room every day and give this lady her medicine. I never saw the lady sit up, never saw the lady talk. Be honest with you, I never saw the lady breathe or move because I stood by the doorway. So she would go in, she would give this lady, her medicine every day, and then come back out. Never heard anything out this room. Like I said, I could not pass a lie detector test if you asked me whether that lady was alive or not, because I never saw her breathe, never saw her move. She didn't talk, she didn't say nothing. She didn't hold her head up to take the medicine, nothing. The other thing was, in this room, there was a boatload of change on the floor. Pennies and dimes and nickels and quarters. And so you would crunch across the floor, or she would crunch across the floor when she went over there to the bed. And I asked her about that. I said, why is all this change on the floor? And she said, oh, this is just where we throw our loose change. I was never satisfied with that answer. And I don't know, years later as an adult, I thought about, maybe they put it down there because this is before wireless and before cameras and things like that, where they could have kept an eye on this lady. Maybe they put it down there so that because her room connected with my cousin's suites, they put it down there if she got out of bed or something. But I really don't think she was getting out of bed because, like I said, I never saw her move. So I don't know. Or there could have been any other reason. Could have been something associated with witchcraft. I have no clue. Hey, if you know, could you put down in the comments why you think this change was down there on the floor? Or if you just happen to know about, if it had something to do with, the supernatural or something, let me know. Because like I said, I have no clue why change was always on the floor. Not only that, she cautioned me not to pick any of that change up. Not like I was going to, because I didn't even want to be in a room with her anyway. But I'm really not going to pick anything up and take it from the room with me. So truthfully, I really didn't want anything to do with this house. And the only reason that I was down there all the time is because my grandmother and her mother were sisters. And they thought that for some reason, me and this cousin would become very close. So, it would be like, oh, go spend some time in this house. And every time I'm like, I really, really don't want to, but I'm going to go down here, okay, whatever. So anyway, past this, whoever this woman was, like I said, the hallway just sort of stretched all the way down. I never did go down further into any of the other rooms. I didn't go down to the end of the hallway because it was always dark. There were people in these little rooms and in these because each room had its own doorway with a closed door, and each room had by the time you get down to that end of the hallway, they had connecting bathrooms. And there were people in there to be completely honest, I don't know who these people were. I'm going to assume, again, as an adult, that she was renting these rooms out to people. I couldn't pass a lie detector test about the truthfulness of that. I just know that there were people in these rooms, and very seldom did they come in and out. I can't remember seeing anybody in the whole time that I went down there come in or go out of one of those rooms, but I could hear them down there. So, and again, the hallway was dark, so I wasn't going down there to find out. It could have been anything in these rooms. That was the second floor. The third floor was a whole suite unto itself, and there was a woman that lived up on the third floor. I believe her name was Mary, and I was told, my cousin told me that she was a lady of the evening, I think is how she put it. So my mind instantly went to Hooker. As an adult, I started thinking she could have been talking about a vampire for all I know, because the whole place was scary. I think I only saw this lady one time, and she was a very small woman. She had very pale skin and very long dark hair. And she was and like I said, I saw her probably once over years. Now, my cousin had a dog. She had a French poodle. French poodle's name was Pierre. It was a really nice dog, black poodle. And at one point, Pierre wasn't there anymore. This is getting closer to when the event happened. One point, Pierre wasn't there anymore. And I asked what happened to him. And my cousin said that Mary did something to the dog, but she wouldn't tell me what she did to the dog. Okay. Next time I went, they had got 2 German Shepherds to replace Pierre. One of the German Shepherds ended up eventually being gone. They never explained that. I never asked. The one that was left did not like me and would walk past me, and when my cousin wasn't looking, would like nip at me. So I tried to stay out of that dog's way. The dog, of course, had the run of the house. Like I said, it was a creepy house. There was a little boy in the house that I remember, and his name was Dennis. And the thing I remember about Dennis was he always had a cold. I don't know where Dennis would come from. I would assume that now as an adult, I assumed that he came from one of those rooms that was down that long hallway on the 2nd floor. But I never saw him actually go in one of those rooms and come out. It would just be, I would be on the 1st floor somewhere, and then, I'd come around a corner and Dennis would be standing there. So, he could have come from anywhere for all I know. I remember playing with Dennis. He was a nice kid. He was, fun to play with. I don't ever remember going outside with Dennis. We played mostly in the house. I don't remember Dennis, and like I said, I don't know if this is just my faulty memory of age, but I honestly don't remember Dennis being around when anybody else was around. I don't remember any grown-up being there at the same time Dennis was there. Now, I remember Dennis being a person, a full, it wasn't like I could see through Dennis or an imaginary friend. I remember him being a full person. My cousin knew who Dennis was, but I don't remember Dennis being around when my aunt was around, or any other grown-up for that matter. This is what happened on my last day in this house. Nobody else was in the house that I knew of. There was nobody else moving around on that 2nd floor. I didn't hear anybody. Nobody was coming in and out of doors or anything like that, except for the old lady, and I figured she was in the bed. She wasn't getting up out the bed. I tried not to think about her because I had no clue what was going on in that room. The rest of the house was extremely quiet. I don't even know if Mary was up on the 3rd floor. I just know that there was no one else anywhere else in this house making any sound. I was standing in the room where the map was on the wall, and it had a window. It was at the front of the house, and it had a window that faced out to the street. I was standing there watching my cousin and my aunt, who had just left out and had made it over to the driveway, and they were getting in a car to go somewhere. And I was just standing there watching them. I don't even know what made me stand there and watch them, but I'm looking directly at them get in this car. While I'm standing there watching my cousin get in the passenger side, I hear my cousin's voice coming from the stairway going down into the basement, calling my name. And she said from the basement, now mind you, I'm standing there watching her get in the car. She said from the basement, "Hey, Kath, come here for a minute." Okay, so, and like I said, and it was clear. It wasn't like it was a whisper. It was her voice. There was nothing, that made me think it was anybody but her, other than the fact that I'm standing there watching her get in a car outside. I was terrified, first thing. I was terrified because I'm watching her and I know if she's getting in this car, she can't be in this basement calling me to come down there. Secondly, she knows I don't like going in that basement, so she wouldn't be there if it was her or her playing a trick or anything like that, or somebody else who could just happen to sound exactly like her. They all knew I wasn't going in that basement by myself. Okay? I'm terrified. And I'm looking at her getting this car, and they're not looking back out at the house like this is some kind of joke or something. They're getting in the car to go somewhere. And I hear this, and I'm frozen. That's the first and only time in my life I have been so scared that I was frozen in place. I couldn't talk, I couldn't move, and a million things were shooting through my head. And again, I'm not that person that's going to go say, "Oh, that sounds just like her. Let me go down and see who that is." My mind immediately went to, okay, I got two routes to get out of this room. I can either go further back into the house through the pantry, through the dining room, back out into the hallway, up the big stairs to cousin's suite and get my stuff and leave. Or I can go past the stairway, that the voice is coming from, and then go up the big stairs and get my stuff and leave. I decided I didn't want to go further into the house because I didn't want to get caught back there. In case there was something or someone, I instinctively knew that whatever this voice was, it was not something good. Okay? It knew that I was still in this house. It knew that I was in this room where the map was. I assumed that it could not come upstairs because it wanted me to go downstairs. I was hoping that that was true. Whatever it was, I knew that it couldn't see me, like through the floor or through the walls, because then it obviously didn't know that I was looking at my cousin get in the car. So, and all this is going through my mind like split second. And I'm thinking, okay, here's my course of action. I'm going to take off running through this room and up the stairs, and I'm going to go past these stairs, and I am going to hope with all of my heart and being that whatever it is not standing right there where I can grab it, or where it could grab me, because I ain't grabbing nothing, where it could grab me. That if I go fast enough, I can go past it, and it won't have time to come up the steps. And then I can go upstairs, get my stuff, come back down them steps, hang a right and around and out that front door. I didn't have a key to the house, but I'm figuring, you know what? Hey, we can come down to stuff like this. I didn't leave the door open. I did close the door. So if somebody comes in and out the house that supposedly stays there, hopefully they got a key. Or maybe they'll, my cousin and my aunt will think that, we forgot to lock the door. I don't know. So I went tearing past the staircase, went upstairs. I threw all my stuff together right quick. I came running back down them steps, hit that corner, went out the front door, and that was the last time I was in that house. Funny enough, nobody really asked me a whole lot about what happened to make me leave like that, but it was halfway down a residential area, so I walked all the way down to the main street, and I caught the bus home, carrying all my little stuff and everything, but never went back. I know this. I often, and like I said, it still gives me chills when I talk about it, when I think about it. I know that I heard it. It wasn't any kind of auditory hallucination. I heard it just as clear as you can hear my voice right now. It wasn't some kind of anything that I imagined. All I wonder now as an adult, and after everything I've gone through and been through in my life, if I had gone down those stairs, I've often wondered what would have happened. Would they have found me dead when they came back? Because, you're always finding or hearing these stories about suddenly somebody somewhere where they normally don't go or shouldn't be, and they're dead. Or would I have been insane? What would have happened to me had I gone down there? Would I have been possessed? I don't know. I just know that the reason I believe it was something demonic, there was a couple reasons. One, the house on a good day was scary. Secondly, I'm not sure Dennis was a real person. Again, I don't remember him ever getting older. I don't remember him being around with the adults or anything else. And that kind of creeps me out as a grown up. The third thing is things that happened in my life afterwards. This may have been one of the things that influenced me to start actually, on an education basis, go into theology and try to figure out what's going on. Because I know that there are things that go on in this world that, people like poo poo and, oh, that isn't real, that doesn't exist. I would always ask them, do you believe that the Bible is real? And they say, yeah, we believe the Bible is real. Of course, it's God, yeah, it's real. And then I would say, okay, but there's all these stories about this kind of stuff in the Bible itself. There's witchcraft, there's people who could, divine the future, there's demons in the Bible, there's time travel, there's one instance where somebody sent a kid to go do something, and when the kid came back, it was 62 years later. And this is actually in the Bible. Stories about things that are unexplainable in the Bible that are, today we would call paranormal. If they believe in the Bible, but they don't believe that these things actually can happen in the real world, then there must be something, there's some kind of disconnect that I didn't understand. And if there's ever something that I don't understand, if I don't understand it, I will try to find the factual basis for it. I will try to find the education to understand it. After going through everything I did and going through my memory and realizing that, you can see things when you're younger that maybe are different. Dennis probably was some real kid, though I couldn't prove it. Whoever this old lady was up on the second floor might have been, on her deathbed, but, I never heard of her actually dying or them taking her out of the house or anything. So, all of these things as a kid might have come across one way, but I know for a fact that house in itself, if it's possible, the house itself was possessed with a lot of evil, angry, scary things. Might explain why the dog nipped at me all the time, because I never did anything to the dog. I was always trying to be nice and pet the dog. I firmly believe that if I had gone down into that basement, something would have happened to me, and I would not either be here today or be the person that I am today. I have encountered other scary things, hence the title of this series, Crazy, Creepy, and True Stories, which you'll hear about in later stories. I'm glad on this side of it as an adult that it did happen, because it guided me into an area that I probably would not have gone into or paid attention to. That's my story. That's why I called it a demon summons, because I've